these new, we got all these new ones on there now that they wouldn't know a real country song if they heard it,
Up and down Broadway, across the avenues, East Nashville to West End, Bellmead and Bellevue, Midtown, Franklin, Green Hills, Redwood, Donaldson, and Hendersonville. The people, the places, the lifestyle, living, loving in the 615.
Welcome to the Pod 615 with your host, William Kitchens. In this episode, we present part 2 of our discussion with Tennessee Poet Laureate, Margaret Britton Vaughn. We hope you had the opportunity to listen to part 1 of this special 2-part series already available on this streaming platform. So, let's jump right back in. Enjoy.
Well, Tammy, let's talk about the Ryman book.
Okay.
Because the one you had published, the Tennessean published.
Well, listen, the Ryman Auditorium to me is the greatest building in the world. Now, when people say, Maggie, you need to travel more. Well, I don't care. I'm in love with the Ryman. And in 1960, I was backstage every Saturday night with them all. I knew them all. And part of when I came back, I was backstage, and when I came back in 65. And I love the Ryman. There's something about that old building that tells you a story. I mean, you feel it when you walk in. You hear the walls talk. And that's, I wrote that first book where the Ryman is telling the story about her children, Minnie Pearl and all of them. And it's my favorite book. My other one, next to favorite, is called Ken, which I talk about my kinfolks. But the Ryman, oh my goodness, there's nothing like the Ryman Auditorium.
You got poems there about the late Ralph Embry.
Ralph Embry.
One of my favorites is just a real simple 4-line one. I wish I had it with me. Chewing gum.
Chewing gum.
Where you talk about just the
chewing
massive
gum
amounts of chewing gums holding it together.
Yeah.
Holding those pews together.
Yeah.
So I'm going to mention some artists here that you've had the pleasure of either knowing or hearing stories about. One that resonated with me when we first met was the story of what Minnie Pearl told you about Hank Williams.
Oh.
When he was being kicked off the Opry.
Well, Hank drank a lot. And he'd show up with too much to drink on Saturday night when he was doing the Opry. And they said, we're going to give you one more chance. And he showed up drinking. And he was going to go on in about 45 minutes or something. And Minnie got in the back seat of a car, and someone was driving, and he rode around Nashville to try to sober him up. And she was sitting back there with him, and she said, oh, Hank, look at the light. They looked out the window, said, look at the light. Because his famous song was, I Saw the Light. And she said, look at the light, Hank, look at the light. And he said, there ain't no light, Minnie. There ain't no light. I heard so many wonderful stories from her. It's just incredible.
And you did write that poem, Grinder Switch.
Yes, I wrote the Grinder Switch poem, and she went nuts over it.
It's great.
And that's when she said, you got to write the book. You got to write your book. And I took it to her, the manuscript. That's when she took it to the Opry. Yeah. She loved it. She wrote the foreword to it, encouraging people to read
Absolutely. And I hope this gets reprinted because it needs to.
Well, I hope it does too when I get the money. Someone was asking me the other day, may have been you, somebody, about the pew, the 18th pew, left-hand side.
That was me. We talked about that. That's one of the poems in the book.
You asked me if I sat in the 18th pew. Well, Lord, I sat in all of them when I wasn't backstage. And but I would look out at people in those pews, just starry-eyed, looking at those Grand Ole Opry people, and children sleeping, their heads in their laps. And I thought, I got to write this. And I did. It's called 18th Pew, Left-Hand Side. And the Ryman. The whole book's the Ryman talking.
Absolutely. You give voice to the
Ryman.
You gave voice to the people of Tennessee. You gave voice to the Ryman. You gave voice to to moms.
Well, I tried to,
Yes, you've done a wonderful job, Maggie.
Well, thank you.
I want to ask you about Ralph Emery. Did you ever meet Ralph?
Oh, yeah. I knew
Tell me
him
about
all.
Ralph.
Well, I mean,
He just recently passed away, and he was.
he was first married to Skeeter Davis, and they divorced. And Ralph was there. I knew them all, Art Divine, and all of them.
I'm going to mention some names.
Okay.
I think Grandpa Jones.
Well, Grandpa was there with Ramona, his wife, and they would come out and do something together. And he was so friendly. They were all friendly. Back then, it was just country. They were still country folks and acted like country folks, that never met a stranger. He was nice. They were all nice. All those announcers and Ralph Emery and Art Divine and
All right, what about it's tragic, but String Bean?
String Bean that was terrible. String Bean, he just carried his money around in his pocket and hid it in the fireplace and all that. And I don't think he went to the bank. I think he just kept it there at the house. And some guys knew it and murdered him, stole the stuff. And it was terrible because String was funny. Wore those breeches down around his knees with the belt on around his knees.
Yeah, he was kind of ahead of the times, wasn't he?
Yeah, yes, he was. But nice. All of them were friendly. It was like family back then.
Sure. All right, your best friend, Loretta.
Yeah.
And you met Loretta.
Yeah.
And you guys became fast friends.
Yeah.
And
Carl and Pearl Butler were dear friends of mine who did Don't Let Me Cross Over, Love's Cheating Line. That was recorded by everybody. And Penny J wrote that, and I knew Penny real well. And
tell me about the best performance you ever saw backstage from the Ryman. There has to be one performance that happened while you were there that made you go,
you mean
wow, that was something.
Going on backstage or
no,
on
I
stage?
know. You tell me that story too, but I'm talking about the live performance that made you go, wow, that was really something special.
I don't know. They all did. Of course, when Minnie would come on, my heart would pound because of my love for her. Were
you there when Nixon appeared?
No, I was not there that night.
Roy Acuff. Tell me about Roy.
Oh, he was wonderful. Roy Acuff was one of the first ones on there. And it started in 1925, and I can't remember the year Roy came, but Roy and Minnie were real close, and Roy helped so many people. And I wrote a song about him not long ago that I hope gets cut one day. It's fun. It's I don't know. You got to kind of be brave. Songs about that. These new, we got all these new ones on there now that they wouldn't know a real country song if they heard it. They kind of gone pop a little. And the song's about these new people that go to Acuff and say, you really need to update to the times of what we're doing, And of course, his big hit back years ago was Great Speckled Bird. And the song goes, Roy said, and honey, that night he gave him the bird.
All right, tell me about little Jimmy Dickens.
Oh, Jimmy was fun.
You got a poem about him in your book.
Yeah, about him being little and loud. He wrote a song, I'm little, but I'm loud.
Something about a cold potato.
Cold potato, take an old cold potato and wait. Tater, he called it. Tater and wait. And sleeping at the foot of the bed, And Lord, if you were stayed in the country, you slept at the foot of the bed when company came. If they didn't have just the one bedroom, you went to the foot of the bed of your grandparents, and the other people had another. Usually, back in the farm days, they had two beds a lot of times in one room. And I think that's where that came from. He did, sleeping at the foot of the bed.
Ernest Tubb.
Ernest Tubb he helped so many people. He and Loretta cut a duet of mine, and called The Bartender, and he was just helpful to everybody. Never met a stranger, and all of them that way. They'd help anybody they could. But he had the record shop, and at midnight he had the Ernest Tubb midnight show, and I'd be there a lot.
I was going to ask you about that, the Midnight Jamboree.
Yeah, I was on that. He had me on there to read a poem. I think it was about Ralph Emery, because Ralph was there that night.
How about that?
Well, my poem about Ralph Emery. I was on there.
The one that's in your book?
It's in the book. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's great. What were those jamborees like? I bet that was a hard ticket after the show.
Well,
Trying to squeeze everybody in
well,
there.
they did what they could. You know, they just kept it going as long as they could. I mean, it was going all night. If the radio stations had stayed on all night,
It was the after party,
yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah, it was. You know, and during the breaks, if they were on at 7:00, usually they were back on at around 9, and so they would go off at 7:30, and a new group would come on the stage, and they'd go over to Tootsie's. And Tootsie's had an upper room that people didn't know about that was closed off. We'd go in the back door and we'd sit in up there.
Through the alley. Go
Yeah, through the alley.
Yeah.
And we'd cut up for a while, and then we'd go back over to the Ryman, you know, and it was great just sitting there talking to people, talking to them. They weren't snobs. They weren't holier than thou. They just would sit and talk to you like you were talking to a family. And we were family. We were family back then. I loved it. I wouldn't take anything for those memories.
We'll be right back to the Pod 615 after this quick message from our sponsor.
Just a short drive from Nashville, in the heart of Middle Tennessee, lies the historic town of Bell Buckle. And there, nestled in amongst the charming antique and boutique stores that line the main street, sits the famous Bell Buckle Cafe. For over 30 years, this family-owned restaurant has served their delicious, freshly made menu items to locals and visitors from everywhere. Not only the best meat and three in Tennessee, the menu also includes barbecue, catfish, chicken tenders, pork chops, burgers, sandwiches, and salads. And after 4 p.m., the popular J. Gregory's Pizza, originally from Huntsville, Alabama, is deliciously prepared and sliced up. Whether a day trip down from Nashville or simply driving through the state, Bell Buckle and the Bell Buckle Cafe is a must. Find the Bell Buckle Cafe on Facebook or check out the website at bellbucklecafe.com.
It's not as country as it used to be. Some of the old timers, so many of them have passed away that did the old country. And
there's always been a generational change. There's always been, we're going to add the drums now. Now we're going to add.
oh yeah, well, see, as long as Roy Acuff was there, he wouldn't allow drums on the stage.
I remember
that was his
reading about that.
That was his thing. No drums. And of course, it started in the Appalachian territory. Mountain people sitting on their porch doing kind of folk songs handed down from Ireland and places. And A.P. Carter, who lived in Hiltons, Virginia, right over the Tennessee line, would go out and collect these songs and work on them, and pretty soon it was becoming more country as it traveled toward Nashville and the Grand Ole Opry. It got more country, more honky-tonk sound than the mountain sound. And A.P. had a daughter named, Jeanette. Since I had COVID, I can't remember things. Well, Jeanette and I became dear friends. She was like in her 80s, late 70s, early 80s when I met her. And I have a funny story about that. Marty Stewart, I knew Marty and Connie real well. And Marty brought her into the Ryman for a special show one night, and I was there. And my editor was here visiting me from New York. And at the end of the show, she did what all Southerners do. Y'all come see me. That's what she'd say. Y'all come see me now. That's how slow she talked. So we got back home, and a day later, I said to Carol Merritt, I said, let's go see her. So I called her. I got her number, and I called her. And I said, Jeanette, I'm Maggie Vaughn. I'm to Port Laurie, Tennessee, and you said y'all coming. I want to come see you with my editor. And she said, well, okay. And I said, okay, well, we'll be there Wednesday or something, whatever day it was. And I hung up, and I said to Carol, I said, she didn't sound too enthusiastic. And she said, well, let's go. So we went. She lived in Hilton's, which she called Po Valley. And, honey, she saw us drive up. She met us at the door. She said, y'all come on in here. I fixed lunch. And I said, well, thank you, Jeanette. I said, you didn't sound too excited about it when I talked to you. And she said, well, I called Johnny. Of course, Johnny was married then to June Carter, her niece. I called Johnny. He said he knowed you, and you was mighty fine. You welcome in my home. And we got to know her, and I would go back a lot to visit her. And one night a huge storm hit, and I was going to drive back. And she said, you just stay right here in this house. Well, I saw a big old grandfather spider. Well, there. Well, I was bitten when I was a child by a spider. It scared me to death. And I thought, I can't sleep here. That spider might get me. So she called her niece, who ran the Carterfold. I can tell you about that in a minute. And she said, I've got the key to Tom T. Hall's house here. He had a little house up there. Said, I'm going to put him there. So I slept in Tom T's bed that night. And when I got back to Bell Buckle, he used to come over here to see me, and he'd eat at the cafe. And I said, well, Tom, I slept in your bed last night, when he got here, or a couple nights ago. And he loved that. And he loved my writing. He said my Grand Ole Opry book was genius. He said that. He said, this book is genius, Maggie. How did you know all this? And I said, I grew up on it. I grew up on it, Tom.
I was going to mention him. Now we'll go back to Johnny Cash.
Tell
me about Johnny. Your first.
I knew Johnny, knew June,
yeah,
knew Helen, Anita, Mama Maybelle, knew them all. And Johnny was not around the Opry a lot at the days that I was going there. At that time, June was going to be, was married or going to be to Carl Smith. And I knew them all. And I remember one time I was in Jeanette's home there, and she said, June was just here, and she wants to see you. And I said, well, where is she? And she said, she's over in Kingsport. At Kingsport, which is right across the line from where's Hilton's. And I got in the car, and I said, well, I'll be back, and I'm going to go find her. And she said, well, she goes to this, she named a store that she liked over there. And I went there, and I walked toward the back of the store, and June was back there, and June saw me, and of course recognized me immediately. Said, oh, I know you, and she said, Jeanette told me you were coming, and I got to see June that day, and I bought a guitar in a pawn shop before it went in there right quick and got her to sign it.
Do you still have that?
No, I sold it.
Oh, no.
I have a guitar, though, that I still have it, that when Kitty Wells, they had her last going away show at somewhere off near the new Opry place. And Marty Stewart and Connie, all of them, Jack Green, they were all there. And they signed the guitar for me. I had another guitar. I had them all sign it, and I still have it. But I let June go because I needed money. When I need money, I sell something. I try to hold on as much as I can to things. I have a lot of stuff that belonged to Minnie Pearl and Uncle Dave Macon and furniture and all of that. I've held.
You said you had some Hank pieces as well.
I got some Hank Williams pieces. I got his end tables and coffee table and a lamp and several things that was his.
Now, of course, Hank passed away before
Yes, he did.
you would have met him, but did you ever meet Hank Jr.?
Oh Lord, yeah. I'd gone to their house when Hank was about 12 to interview Audrey, but she wasn't there. So I sat and talked to Junior a long time. He showed me all his guns and all that. Then I would see him after he got on the Opry. And Audrey, I would see. A friend of mine and myself, we started a publishing company. And of course, I worked for the paper, so I didn't spend much time there. I'd go there at night. And Audrey had an office in the same building, so we'd see Audrey quite a bit.
Did she ever share any stories about Hank with you?
Well, no, because we didn't talk that much. Now, Barbara, who was the partner with me, knew her real well.
The Pod 615 will return in just a few moments.
Are you looking for a new way to promote your business, product, or service? If yes, then why not consider advertising here on Pod 615? Use your own ad, or we'll create a custom one to showcase your brand right here. Reach out to us online at pod615.com. That's pod and the numbers 615 and learn how we can help promote your business, product, or service.
Okay, I want to ask you, in my research about you, Maggie, is it a book of poems called Talking to Twain at Quarry Farm?
Yes.
And now, Mark Twain was an inspiration. He's been an inspiration to many writers. Tell me about that. And
Well, Elmira, New York, was where he spent his summers. His sister-in-law lived there, his wife's sister. She had young children the same age as Mark. And they spent all summer there, and that's where he did his writing. He traveled in the winter to places and spoke, but he wrote Huckleberry Finn and all those famous books at that farm. Matter of fact, the sister-in-law couldn't stand him smoking in the house, all those cigars, and built a beautiful studio for him to write in and put it on out in the back up on a little hill. And I wrote in it. It had been moved to the college there. And I was the first poet to ever receive a fellowship there. The rest of them were all people who were writing biographies on him. And I got to sleep in the bed, ate at his table, wrote in his studio. And my project, I told him, you had to have a project. I said, I'm going to write a book like I'm talking to him, living here with him. And I did. It was called Talking to Twain at Quarry Farm, because the farm was called Quarry Farm. And her parents, his wife's parents, lived maybe a mile from there, from this summer place where they have a summer home. But it was a big 2-story brick home, a real fine home. But back then, a mile was like 10 miles, back in his day. So I was like he was there. I talked to him. And one night I was out late and I thought, Lord, I forgot to leave a light on. And when I got back, a light was on in that house. And I said, well, Mark, you turned the light on for me. I felt him all around me. I would talk to him. And what's so funny is the night that they had the election and they couldn't decide if Gore won or Bush had won. It went back and forth. Every hour it changed. And I was watching it in a room there, and I said, well, Mark, honey, you'd love this. I said, you'd be writing about this. And, I talked to him just like I was talking to him. I was there on Thanksgiving, and the dining room had this beautiful antique long table with all these portraits of the family hanging on the wall. And there I sat with that fine china eating a bologna sandwich because I can't cook. I thought Mark would love this. Loved him.
Well, what's next for you, Maggie? What do you want to see accomplished next?
I'm working on books every day. I've got about 4 books in the works right now.
And you still handwrite everything?
I handwrite everything. But my problem is I can't read my writing. So Shirley, my friend, comes over and who takes care of me. And I dictate it to her and she'll write it where someone can type it and read it. But I have a hard time reading it to her because I write so fast. I write I'm working on 4 books at one time,
Wow.
and I'm updating the Opry book.
Okay.
I just got to get the money to get them out.
Okay.
So I'm selling a lot of my stuff, selling my books.
Well, you're not hard to find, are you? Like
No,
you just
Lord.
come to Bell Buckle and ask.
the Bell
any-
Buckle, everybody knows who I am.
Everybody knows where you live.
Yeah, and they come by, like I say, last Sunday I had 11 or 12 people here. Some from Ohio, some from Michigan. They come from all over the United States.
Maggie, thank you for sharing this time with
Thank
me,
you.
with our listeners, thank you for.
honey. And you come anytime, and anybody's listening, come to Bell Buckle. I'm in my living room and love to see you, because, honey, I love to live.
We love you too, Maggie.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you for listening to our special 2-part interview with poet, author, and lyricist Maggie Vaughn. We hope you enjoyed the conversation from this treasured Tennessee resident. Do you know a person of interest you'd like to hear interviewed on our podcast? Let us know. Reach out to the show through our website at pod615.com or send us a message on any of our social media accounts. Once again, thanks for listening.
Have you considered creating your own business podcast? If you're an expert in your field or simply want to engage your customers, then you should. Guess what? Pod615 offers professional corporate podcast production, editing, and publishing. With a wide variety of services to choose from, we can give voice to your business. Reach out to us on social media or the internet to learn more about featured and branded podcast production from Pod615.